And Lauren, just if you want to, make sure you're on speaker view, not grid view. If you're on, that way we'll see you and not the participants when we record.
There we go.
Because it records your view.
Okay. All right, so I believe it is recording now. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. My name is Lauren Wilson. I'm the Associate Director of Student Development and excited to chat with you all today about keeping your members motivated in a digital environment, because obviously things are a little bit crazy and hectic right now. So I wanted to start by asking you all to introduce yourself, perhaps in the chat. Share your name, share what organizations you're with, and why you joined your organization. I think it's really important just to kind of understand what motivated you to join your own organization. So would love to see some of you sharing. I know when I was in undergrad, I was a part of our campus activities board, which is very similar to SET. And for me, that was something that I kind of wanted to join as a way to meet new people. I thought it connected pretty well with my communication studies major. You know, just thought it was a good way to get connected with, you know, my university. I also joined our field hockey club because that was something that I did in high school and thought it would be cool to kind of continue on a hobby that I had just as another fun thing to do during college. So would love to hear some of you share, perhaps in the chat. I can't even see the chat right now. I'm trying to bring it back up. All right, I can't seem to open up the chat box. Are people sharing? There we go.
Yep, they're coming through.
All right, perfect. All right, so some people joined because they want to do community service, make new friends, clubs that align with your major, love the energy of the groups. Let's see what else we have here. Some of their goals are similar to your goals. Absolutely, those are all definitely great reasons to join an organization. So definitely continue on with the chat as I am going through, but most of the time when we ask people what motivates them to join an organization, most people want to strengthen their leadership skills. They believe in the mission of the organization that they're trying to join. They want to make friends, connect with students with similar interests, build their professional network, gain experience, or have some kind of connection to their major, and really to have fun. So if you were to go back and ask your members kind of what motivated them to join their organization, chances are they might fall into one of these categories. So when I think about motivating members, I think about some of the sessions that I used to do during officer training last year. And these are some of the tips that I would share with club leaders on how to keep their members motivated. Again, this is the pre-COVID way, which are all still really applicable. So invest in team building, definitely put in that effort at the beginning of the year to build that cohesive team, because your members are going to be more connected to your organization if they feel like they matter and they feel like they're connected. Delegate effectively. So when you think about dividing up your tasks, all too often the president and the vice president kind of run the show, and it's easier for them to do things rather than teach somebody else how to do things. But you really want to make sure that you're delegating those tasks and utilizing your members' strengths as a way to keep them involved. Because again, a student is going to feel more connected with their organization when they know that their effort and their work matters. So delegating and using their strengths, forming committees, assigning tasks, all of those things are great ways to keep your members motivated and keep them feeling connected with your organization. Some other ways, again, the pre-COVID way, hold your members accountable. So if you are delegating something to them, make sure that you're following up. So again, they know that what they're doing matters and is making a difference. Use praise and criticism. So I always say the rule of thumb is to praise in public and criticize in private. If you have to give somebody some constructive feedback or follow up on a deadline that was missed, nobody wants to be called out in the middle of a meeting, especially on Zoom. So definitely make sure that you are reaching out to them in private to kind of remind them of deadlines or things that they might have missed or ways that they could do things better. And then when they do something great, praise them in public, make sure that that's when you shout it out to the world at your club meeting, what a great job they did. Encourage collaboration, generate enthusiasm, and lead by example. So those are all things that we want to make sure that we're doing to keep our members motivated. And again, these are all the suggestions, the basic suggestions that applies to everybody in the pre-COVID way. And these are all things that, again, are all still applicable. But when I think about motivating students right now, it is so different. And so when I was thinking about it, I realized it's not keeping members motivated just in a digital environment. It's how do we keep our members motivated during a global pandemic, which is something that nobody has ever experienced before. So I kind of wanted to shift the conversation because, again, we're not just talking about how to motivate people when we're talking with them through a computer. There's so many other factors that kind of play into motivating people right now. Real quick, Jeff, do we have everybody in from the waiting room? I saw a few people are trying to join.
Yep, I keep clicking the waiting room.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so let's look at the impact of COVID-19 on student leaders and just motivation in general. So when you think about all of us, kind of what we've all been through these past 5 months, is it now? We're all very different. All of our priorities are different and have changed. Back in January and February, your organization may have been top on their priority list, right behind classes. So they might have been, or maybe not. Maybe your organization was prioritized above classes, which I know is sometimes the case with student leaders. Not that we encourage that, but think about how everybody's priorities have shifted in the last few months. What was the most important thing in January might not be the most important thing in their lives right now. Everybody is under a significant amount of emotional pressure, whether it's worrying about your health, your finances, even just COVID aside, the race relations in our country right now. Like, there is so much emotional stress that is going on within our, for our students, that it's important to recognize that. The financial and economic pressure, a lot of our students are either they lost their jobs, one of their parents may have lost their job, and so their level of income is another huge stressor that is factoring into their motivation to be present. Health and safety, of course, I think is one of the #1 things on everybody's mind, is kind of how to stay safe and how to keep your loved ones safe during a global pandemic. Disorganization, so we are, any sense of schedule and normalcy that we had before has kind of been thrown out the window. Like, we are all navigating how to keep ourselves on a time schedule and how to budget our time effectively in a way that we're still feeling productive. And that's a challenge. I mean, like the roller coaster image, I mean, who hasn't felt that way at some point in the last 5 months, or felt like the last 5 months have been a roller coaster? Some other impacts of COVID-19 on student leaders and motivation, again, the lack of structure, the lack of time management, the environmental change. You're no longer going to class in a classroom and coming home to your residence hall or your apartment to study and get your work done. A lot of our students are sharing space with parents, with siblings, with grandparents. Everybody's environmental, their environment has changed, and they're learning in a new way, and they're trying to be active student leaders in a new way. The lack of in-person contact. So again, I mean, I'm an introvert, so I want to say that I've been okay with this, but I really do miss kind of the informal communication that would happen on a day-to-day basis. I miss running down the hall and talking to Joe and Jeff and Diane and Shadia just to say, like, hey, did you hear about this? Or I have a quick question. Now it's all become so formal where you have to, send a text, hey, can we Zoom in an hour because I have a few quick questions. And so the lack of in-person contact, the decreased communication, those are all factors to consider. Even though we feel like we are communicating well with our student leaders and our student employees and each other, the reality is we're communicating a lot less than we did in January and in February and in early March. And then the last thing that it's really important to consider is loss and grief. And so over the last 5 months, chances are some of your members may have physically lost somebody in their life, or lost somebody who, you know, was just really important to them. So they may be grieving the loss of a person, but also they're grieving the loss of an experience. And so when you think about, you know, the person who was president of your organization last year, or the special events chair who was planning the concert, planning the end of year formal, planning all these special events, and then they all got canceled, like that sucks. And it really is disappointing to a lot of student leaders that, you know, they are grieving the loss of an experience that they thought that they'd have. Even like a lot of our clubs, they do their elections at some point in the spring. So you may have even had your election before, you know, the campus kind of closed down, and may have been so excited that you are the president for your organization for the next year. And now it's like, okay, nowhere in my binder does it say how to do this. And, you know, I know that I'm not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z next year. Now I'm really disappointed. And so that's a really important thing to recognize is, again, not just grieving people and things, but like grieving the loss of an experience or the expectations that that you and your members had. So it's really important, with all that said, that now is the time to lead with your heart. Now is the time to call the members of your organization and be a friend first, and simply check in before you go into student leader mode. It's also important that, you know, at this point, like, credentials and position no longer matter. People need to know that you care. And that is the most important thing that you could do as a leader, is to be authentic and let your members know that you care about them. Not that you care because they're the secretary and they need to take minutes from your meeting and send them to people, but that you are concerned about their well-being as a person, and you want to check in and make sure that they're okay. So at some point during the last few months, I stumbled upon this fantastic webinar, and I will, towards the end, I don't want to get off my screen now, but I'll go ahead and dump this link in the chat, so this way you can access it as well. But TJ Sullivan has a book that he's had out for a long time called Motivating the Middle, and it's all about student leaders and how they can kind of motivate the middle third of their organization. But he actually kind of revamped things for the quarantine, and kind of came out with this pandemic edition. So I want to give you the cliff notes, the recap, if you will, but if you have about 40 minutes and you want to go and watch that later, it definitely is really good for student leaders. So he kind of breaks things down into like the top third, the middle third, and the bottom third members. He kind of talks about who they are, what motivates each of those groups, what they're currently struggling with, and then what you can do as a leader to engage those different populations. So in terms of the top third, those are your members who are most involved and most engaged with your organization. Chances are they are your e-board members, or they are that very active freshman or sophomore who just can't wait to apply for a leadership position and be a part of the election process as you go and pick your leadership. They are motivated by success, and they're motivated by using their strengths and their talents and kind of showing them off to the world. Right now, grieving the loss of an experience is huge for the top third. They're grieving the canceled events. They can't exercise their strength. They can't showcase all the things that make them a strong leader for their organization. The middle third are the members who, they show up, they help with small tasks, but they're unlikely to seek a leadership position. So the middle third are your members that will raise their hand and volunteer to table for the bake sale, or they will volunteer to sell 10 tickets for your fundraiser. But chances are they're not going to be running for vice president next year. They're not going to be running for membership chair. They're not going to be running for X, Y, and Z position. They're in it because they love the social interactions, they love the friendships, the connections that they've made, but they're really not interested in taking on the huge responsibility of being a designated student leader in that organization. But they're there, they want to show up, they want to help. And right now they're really missing the social connections, because that is what motivated them to join the organization. So now we have the bottom third. And I think that automatically in your heads, you're probably thinking, oh, those are the bad people in the organization. They're not bad people. They're just not that into you right now. Bottom third members may be oppositional, so they may be fighting every decision that you make. And part of that is good because it still shows that they care about your organization. But some bottom third members might just be absent. So they're the ones who are not responding to emails. They're not showing up to your general member meetings. And it's not because they don't want to be a part of your organization, but remember all of the things that we talked about, how COVID-19 has had an impact on all of your members. And so some of them, their priorities have shifted, and being a part of your organization might not be top on their list, and that's okay. They're usually missing one specific thing about your organization, but maybe not missing the entire package. So they might be there for formal, they might be there for the big special event that you have every spring. But chances are they're not missing the entire club experience. So what can you do? With the top third members of your organization, check in with them frequently, listen to their ideas, help them reframe the situation and kind of steer them on a more positive path. And we'll talk about that a little bit later today. But make sure that you are picking up the phone and calling them, texting them, really just checking in frequently and giving them something to do. So maybe amongst your e-board, look at your full membership. If you have 30 members, maybe each e-board members takes between 10 and 15 people to go ahead and call. And then check back in with each other and just see what the themes are for how everybody is doing. Because it really is important to check in and, like I said, lead with the heart first, and see how everybody is doing in your organization before you just dive right into student leader mode. For the middle third, again, they're there for the social connections, so they will love to hear from you. But maybe if you're having trouble reaching one of the bottom third members and having a hard time getting a response from them, maybe you can engage your middle third and be like, hey, Jeff, I know that you're really good friends with Joe. Would you mind reaching out to him, because I haven't heard from him in a while and I know that the two of you are close. Can you just check in and see how he's doing? So almost delegating some of those small tasks to the middle third of your membership to ask for their help in checking in on others. Really, you're going to want to use your energy as a student leader, checking in and engaging your top third and your middle third. Don't waste your energy with the bottom third. You can include them. So, I mean, I wouldn't leave them out. Definitely invite them to your meetings, send them the newsletter, send them the email, but don't harass them, because chances are their priorities have shifted and they're focused on other things. They might come back. So maybe in the next few months, once life hopefully settles down a little bit for everybody, they might come back and be a part of your organization again, and that's great. But you don't want to pressure them too much, because there's so much going on with everybody right now that their priorities have shifted, and that's okay. So again, I'll dump the link for this into the chat towards the end, so that you can go and watch it later if you'd like, but highly recommend it. So we talked a little bit about keeping members motivated the pre-COVID way, but I also want to talk about some tips for how you can motivate your members now during a pandemic in a digital environment, X, Y, and Z. So lead with your heart. We talked about this a little bit. Members have to know that you care. That's so important for you to be authentic right now, because they'll know if you're not. They'll know if you're just asking a question and moving on. They really need to know that you care about them and that you're concerned with their well-being. Prioritize communication. So you might think that you're reaching out to your members a lot, but I feel like right now everybody just wants communication. They want to know what's going on. Be consistent and predictable. Right now there is so much uncertainty and so much chaos in everybody's life that if you could simply keep your meetings on a regular day and a regular time, that is so important, just to have some kind of consistency for your members. Just like, as an example, right now we're doing our summer, training series every Tuesday, 10 a.m., every Tuesday, 10 a.m. I know that Tuesdays at 10 a.m. might not work for everybody, but you all know, and I know that there's a few of you who have come to just about every training, and I appreciate that, but all of you know Tuesdays at 10 a.m. is when this will happen. Be transparent. So again, kind of going back to communication, I don't know that anybody has final concrete answers right now. in today's world, everything changes by the day. We never know what the governor is going to say at his next briefing, or what the CDC guidance, or the, just the state guidance. Everything is changing, but be transparent. I've had lots of club leaders reach out to me in the last few weeks asking like, hey, how is this going to work for the fall? And my answer is always, well, it's always changing, and I don't have any definite answers, but here's the direction that we're leaning, and here's what we're thinking about doing for the fall semester, because I don't want to blindside people and, them, like, if you're really curious about what's happening, I will tell you kind of what's being talked about and what things are being considered. I don't want to hide that from everybody, because I want to be transparent and let them know kind of where we stand and where things are heading, but also recognize all of that can change at any time, because that is the world that we live in these days. Acknowledge the good work. So again, it takes everybody so much more effort to just be productive these days. I feel like life in general takes more energy these days. And so when you have a member who is really shining and doing some great work, make sure that you acknowledge that, make sure you thank them, do what you can to kind of recognize that good work and keep that person engaged. Celebrate success. I mean, who doesn't want to celebrate all of the wins that we can get these days? So definitely important to make sure that you and your organization members are celebrating the good things. Reframe the situation. If you turn on the news for even just 5 minutes, it's all just so negative. But there are some really great positive things that have come from the quarantine, and some great things that could continue to come. Like, I think about our student senate meetings and how, when we were doing in-person meetings for the last however many years that we've had a student senate, the attendance was pretty low, and the people who came mostly were people who were coming to ask for money for their clubs and organizations, and there were people who were coming to have their voice heard about a certain issue during the public comment section. But ever since we started streaming the Senate meetings, I mean, we have so many more people who are tuning in and engaging with our student senate and asking great questions and really there to hear all of the updates. So I think about that as one of the benefits of the quarantine, is that it's kind of pushed us to do things differently. And some of that has turned out much better than it was in the past. And so I think that we need to focus on that, just because it's new, just because things are changing, doesn't mean it's bad. There's a lot of great things that have kind of emerged that I hope will stay. Curbside pickup, what a dream. I hope that stays forever, because I would be totally fine not stepping foot in a grocery store ever again. But I know everyone's different. And then reimagining what could be. So really, like, you're starting with a blank slate. And I know that can be really scary for a lot of student leaders, not to have the binder that the last president left of like all the instructions, all of the ingredients that go into making a successful event. But a blank slate doesn't have to be scary. Like, it's your opportunity to create something new, to really experiment with some new ideas, and it's okay to fail. Nobody has done this before. Nobody has been in your shoes where you are the president or the vice president of a club during a global pandemic. You were the first one to have that experience. And so whatever you do, like, we encourage you to experiment and to try new things and to fail and learn from it and bounce back and do it bigger and better and tweak your plan as you go. Because again, that's kind of the world that we're living in right now. We have to experiment and be okay with that. So I wanted to kind of highlight a few really short books because really during a pandemic, it's what we have time for, right? Are the short, quick reads. So one of my favorite books from grad school is The Thin Book of Appreciative Inquiry. So that is like literally like a 20-minute read if you have time. And I think that if you look it up online, I think that there's one website that almost has like the PDF version of the book. So I would highly recommend it. But for those who don't have time to add another book to their list, Appreciative Inquiry is really a strengths-based approach to leadership, and focuses on what works well within an organization or within a team. And so, for example, if you were to think about a program that you did last year, if you were to survey every single person who went to your program to find out like what went well, what went wrong, what did you like, what didn't you like, if 95% of those people come back and say, what a great event, I was so satisfied with that, that was the best event ever, chances are you're focusing on the 5% of people that had problems. And those are the comments that you're reading. And that's what you're focusing on. And so when you focus on the 5% of people that had a problem, or the 5% that had negative feedback, that is now what your organization is fully focused on. They're focusing on that event as a problem that needs to be solved, rather than 95% of people really liked it. So let's see what we did well and continue to do more of that. So many of us just automatically focus in on the problems and the problems that need to be fixed. And so when you think about appreciative inquiry, you really want to focus on like what works well within your organization. So one of the assumptions is in every society, organization, or group, something works. And so talking about that within your organization, finding out what your strengths are as an organization and doing that more. What we focus on becomes our reality. So again, when we focus on the 5% of people that had a problem with our event or a problem within our organization, those are the things that we tend to focus on. And all of our energy is now going towards a problem rather than our strength. Reality is created in the moment, and there are multiple realities. And the act of asking questions of an organization or group influences the group in some way. So I'm going to share with you some of the basic and the common questions that are, I guess, themes of appreciative inquiry. So here's like 3 questions that you can ask your organization members to kind of help them think about like what the strengths of each individual leader is and the strengths of your organization as a whole. So think back about a time in this organization, find a moment that was a high point when you felt most effective and engaged. Describe how you felt and what made the situation possible. So again, like if you're all thinking about that right now, chances are you're smiling, thinking about a certain time or a certain memory when you felt successful and you felt the most productive. If I had changed that question and asked about a time where you failed and what you did wrong, chances are your whole demeanor would change and your whole attitude would change. So thinking about, you know, the appreciative inquiry approach, have them focus on those high points and have them focus on a time that they felt most effective, most engaged, most successful, so that this way that's what they're focusing on. Without being humble, describe what you value the most about yourself, your work, and your organization. And describe your 3 concrete wishes for the future of this organization. So again, like imagining what could be. Like I said, we are all starting with that blank slate, and it's important that we, you know, kind of reframe and reimagine what we could be doing. So Who Moved My Cheese? This is such an old book, but I can't help but think about it during this pandemic. So for those of you, again, it's a really short book. But for those of you who haven't read it, basically it's a story about a maze with some cheese in it, and there are 2 mice and there's 2 little people who go through the maze looking for their cheese. So they find their huge room of cheese that they go there every day. They can, you know, focus on like, this is the room that has my cheese. I know it's going to be there. I know it's always going to be the same. And they're happy there. And day by day, the stash of cheese slowly goes down, slowly disappears. And I believe it's the mice who are like, one day we're going to come here and this cheese is no longer going to be here. So let's go through the maze and look for where the next stash of cheese might be. The other 2 people kind of stay there, and they go there one day and it's completely empty. And for them, it's like, the cheese is supposed to be here. This is where the cheese always is. And I'm going to stay here because one day it will reappear and it will go back to normal. So when you think about that and kind of relate it to the COVID-19 era, there are some people and some industries and some things that are going on right now where people are just sitting and waiting to get back to normal. They're not willing to change. They're just waiting. And I feel like right now, like I hate to break it to you, but we're not going to be going back to the old normal. I know people kind of are tired of hearing the phrase the new normal, but it's really important to think about that and to move forward and embrace that. Because you can't just sit and wait for things to get back to the old way. For example, I know that I'm in charge of kind of leading the committee for University Weekend, which is in October. We reached out to some other schools to find out what they're doing. And for so many of them, it's like, well, we're going to postpone to the spring. So this way we can do it in the spring. That is the perspective of somebody who is sitting in that empty room waiting for the cheese to reappear. They are an example of, in the spring, it's going to be normal again, and we could do everything that we used to do. For me, I don't want to be that person that is sitting in that room with the empty cheese waiting for it to reappear. I'm going to go through the maze and find a new way of doing it. Again, when you think about like trying to be consistent, trying to honor traditions, I don't want to cancel something else for all of our students and alumni and families. So we are going to do University Weekend. It will be mostly virtual. There may be a few in-person events that we could do socially distant or physically distant, but I'm not going to sit in that room waiting for the new normal or waiting for the old normal to come back. And so I would encourage you to work with your members on kind of embracing change. Like, let's not sit here waiting to be able to do everything that we used to do. Let's try to think creatively and be innovative in moving our organization forward and trying something different. Nobody's going to be mad at you for failing. Try those new crazy ideas, try to dream big and come up with, you know, the next best thing. If you fail and you try again, but if it works, you have done something really, really well, and you are the first ones to do it. So embrace that blank slate. I know it can be scary, but you know, there's so many opportunities to be innovative and creative right now, and that's where we need to be focusing our energy. So the last book that I wanted to share is actually a kid's book. Some of the best lessons are always shared through kids' books, right? Think about all the lessons that we learned from Dr. Seuss, right? So Beautiful Oops, I have it right here. This is a book that kind of just talks about like making mistakes and bouncing back from mistakes, and that it's okay to embrace those mistakes. And so I'm just going to share a few pages of it, even though it's probably short enough where I could read. But a smudge and a smear, oh, hold on, can make magic appear. And so there's a little drip of paint that spills on that paper, and they turn it into some artwork. A stain, can you all see that? All right, so a stain has potential if you play with its shape. So there's that coffee stain, and they turned it into some beautiful artwork. And so again, I know it's a silly little kid's book, but it really kind of helps you think about not looking at this whole situation as a mistake or a problem, but like, let's start focusing on how we can work around that problem, and do things better, do things differently, embrace that drip of paint that spilled on our paper, and see what we can do with it. So that is sort of, I feel like I flew through this, but I also wanted to leave some time for questions and thoughts, and you know, just your feedback in general on what works, what ideas you have moving forward, what questions you might have about how to motivate your members. So I'm going to stop sharing in just a second, but I do want to do a quick plug for our next Student Leader Roundtable, which is next Tuesday. And then after that, we have Running and Engaging Meeting, Osprey Hub 101. And then at the end of August, we are going to be focusing on our virtual involvement fair and recruitment strategies for the fall semester. So we do have some really exciting trainings lined up for you in August. But let me go ahead and stop sharing. So this way we can have a better conversation. And I'm also going to, as promised, drop the link for the TJ Sullivan webinar. It's free, so definitely a good thing to kind of click on and check out. The other thing I'm going to be putting in here is the attendance link for today. So if you can all click on this link, this way your attendance is marked on Osprey Hub. That would be helpful for me. But what questions do you all have? What thoughts do you have? What are your concerns as you start the new semester and are trying to motivate your members?
I have a question.
What's up, Gabby?
So, do you think that there's a different approach for motivating not your members, but for the rest of your e-board? Because right now, I think I mentioned this at one of the last sessions, I'm pretty much the only member of the e-board who hasn't given up and isn't in doomsday mode and who still wants to see the organization continue.
Mm-hmm.
So is there like a different approach for the e-board, or should I just kind of use the same strategies?
Well, I mean, I think that when you think about your e-board, chances are they are that the top third members, they are the ones who are more engaged, and right now they're grieving the loss of an experience.
Mhm.
And so, they might be going through some different things, or there's a chance that a top third member from last year might have shifted priorities and might now be a bottom third member. So I think it's important to check in and ask them how they're doing. Again, be a friend first and a student leader second. So check in with them and find out like what's going on and how are how are they doing? How is their family doing? What are their stresses right now? Because chances are they might be going through other things that you might not be aware of, you know what I mean? And they may have been, even though they may have been super engaged and super into your organization last year, they may have shifted and are now a bottom third member because their priorities have changed. So I think it's important just to call and check in and see how they're doing. And then once you have that perspective of how they're doing, then maybe you can kind of shift into the conversation about like, all right, let's just brainstorm. Like we have a blank slate. We can't do things the way that we used to, but let's think about some new ideas that we could do. Like what are some things we could do virtually? What are some big ideas? Like even if you don't think it's, feasible for Stockton Acapella to do one of those, the Disney covers, or do a show like that. Let's just brainstorm and put all the ideas out there now, and then start seeing what we could do. And maybe, once you're having that brainstorming session, it's possible that there might be an idea that they're like, yes, I want to take the lead on that. And now you're re-engaging that top third and you're giving them, they can exercise their strength, exercise their skill, and hopefully get re-engaged. If it turns out that they're one of the bottom third members and their priorities have changed, then we've got to kind of embrace that too, and engage, spend your energy engaging the top third and the middle third. And when they're ready to come back, they will.
This is sort of related, kind of a part two. So I know that like since we're obviously in an unprecedented situation, I don't know. I assume StuDev's going to be kind of flexible, but so I don't know exactly what the requirement is for an e-board. Isn't it like we have to have like 5 members or something like that?
I'll jump in here and kind of answer that. Hi, it's Jeff, everyone. The requirements for how many people in your e-board is actually part of your constitution. There isn't like a StuDev minimum. The StuDev minimum is just in members and 10 general. But Gabby, if I can just a quick thing about if your e-board is lacking and everyone is kind of in doomsday mode, it's probably a really, really good time, like once you've checked in and you're sure that everyone is still at least interested and not in need of something different that's not club based. Re-examining the original core concept of the group might be a really good way to re-energize, because if you're thinking, we had talked to a student who, their base thing that their club does is not available.
Right.
And, like right now, if it is singing and it's hard to sing, is that the only thing we can do? Is there a way to redo what we do to go back to the core mission? Literature club was discussed. I have a friend who is a professional dance instructor. She's literally a college professor at a dance school. And, she posted on Facebook the other day, I'm tired of hearing people saying we can't dance. It's just time to refocus on our solo numbers and our choreography for solo. So how can you reframe the mission of the club to be more appropriate in this time? And that's the Who Moved My Cheese lesson.
Right.
Finding what really is important, even if it's not what you've done for 100 years.
Right. Okay, good.
But that comes
Thank you.
after. But honestly, that comes after, hey, is everyone okay?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you have to lead from the heart first. And once you're sure that everyone is okay, and if they just throw their hands up and just say, I don't know what to do, that's a great time to say, you're right. Let's figure out something new to do.
Mm-hmm. But so like literature club's not gonna be like axed if we only have 3 people come back, right? Like, are
No,
we okay?
no. And that's just a lesson for everyone. You know, StuDev is not here to slam the
Kill
door,
us. Okay.
close a club because there's something wrong. We're here to help you
Mhm.
fix whatever is wrong so you can accomplish those goals.
Cool. Just checking.
Thanks, Gabby.
Thank you.
And I mean, we're always here to brainstorm too. So if you wanted to have a separate meeting later where we can just brainstorm some ideas of what literature club could do, what a cappella could do this year, we can always do that. So this way, when you go and you meet with your members to kind of brainstorm what could be, you already have some tricks in your pocket that you could pull out.
Mm-hmm. Acapella's chilling. We're great. We're thriving. Literature club, not so much.
Yeah.
But we'll be fine. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah. It will be fine though. It really will. There's plenty of things to do. Are there other questions that other folks had about motivating your members, or questions, ideas, things you found helpful, things you're going to go and do now? Crickets. All
I
right,
have a question. I was talking with my mic off. I'm sorry. How long would you say is too long to where members start losing motivation on a virtual meeting?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
How long would you think is like too long for a virtual meeting where members start like disengaging and losing motivation to stay like connected and everything like that?
Yeah. It's hard to say. I think that if you're having an engaging meeting, it could last an hour, it could last an hour and a half, depending on what your topics are and how you're engaging your members. I know that Joe Thompson is running a session in 2 weeks. I think it's August 11th, on how to run an engaging digital meeting. So we're going to have a training session solely dedicated to that topic. So I would definitely chime in there and tune in to see what tips he's sharing. But you know, I think like, I know it's hard to say like read the room when you're in Zoom, but I think, you know, finding ways to engage your members, making sure that it's not just the president talking at everybody, but that you're really trying to find ways to reach out to your members. I know in one of the club meetings that I sat in a few months ago, we were talking about a kind of a touchy topic. And so when I had asked the members to share their opinions on it, a lot of them were quiet and weren't sharing anything. And so I finally said, you know, if you're not comfortable, send me a private message on Zoom, like in the chat, like send me a private message and I will read your question out loud anonymously, or I will read your feedback aloud anonymously. So I think, like, again, depending on what your topic is at your meeting, some people might be more comfortable than others kind of engaging on Zoom and sharing their thoughts and their feedback. I also know, and this might be a little bit different for professional staff versus students, but I feel like some people are afraid to have the camera on, or don't prefer not to have the camera on because of whatever chaos might be happening in the background. So like for me, it's kids. Thankfully, my mom has taken both of them today, so they're not here running around and talking to me about Fortnite and Minecraft and Zelda and all of those other very important things that they have to talk about, which always come up during meetings for me. Like that's always the time that they have to talk about those things. But maybe making it, setting the ground rules and the expectations early on. Like, it's okay. Like if you're Zooming from your bedroom because that's the only place that's quiet right now, that's okay. If your little brother or sister is running around and driving you nuts, like that's okay. We're all in this together. We're all in this crazy Zoom digital world together. you know, maybe almost giving them permission to like embrace whatever chaos is going on behind you, and it's okay to tune in with your camera on, and we just want to see you, and kind of making that safe. So I'm sorry, Danielle, I know that was a really long, wordy response. I don't know that I even answered your question, but I would say like
Yeah,
try to read the room. If they're engaged, keep that conversation going. If you're getting bored with it, chances are they're getting bored with it too.
okay.
You know, so find conversation topics that you know, that your members can participate in. I haven't really used the polls feature too often, but as a Zoom host, you can ask questions and have your members, you know, vote for which day of the week works best for this meeting, or what day of the week works best for your next program. So you can even use that as a way to keep them engaged and focused. So I hope that that helps.
Yeah, it totally did. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or conversation starters?
No, I love the thought of, because, you know, we do a ton of Zoom meetings too, and we definitely have not found the magic elixir to making Zoom meetings exciting. You know, and Joe, I'm sure, is going to have a ton of information for us. Was it 2 weeks from now, right? Or next
Yeah.
week? Yeah.
2 weeks. Next week
2
is
weeks, 2
the
weeks.
student leader roundtable. The week
Oh,
after is
that's right.
one about meetings.
Yeah, we definitely haven't found it, but I think there's a, you know, last week we had the advisor roundtable, and they had some interesting thoughts on what they see happening with Zoom. And they had some interesting, like, well, why are the students doing this and why are the students doing that? And they really hadn't looked at the lens, I think, from both sides.
Mhm.
And, you know, like they said, oh, they're checked out because they're sitting on their bed, or they're checked out because they're doing this or they're doing that. And, you know, it really occurred to me that, you know, there can be so many definitions on what a good meeting is electronically and how people are engaged. And if Gabby's got a goat on her lap right now, or somebody's dog comes in, or somebody's, you know, something happens, somebody forgets to mute their mic and says something silly, you know, like, this is all just the new reality. And that doesn't make people bad people and doesn't make a bad meeting. I mean, anything, you know, take 10 minutes and say, hey, anybody got a dog to show? These are good things. I think in motivating in the digital world, connecting in a human way over the Zoom, in the screen, is going to be so helpful in engaging your members and motivating people to come back. And that's going to help motivate your members just to attend the meeting. So yeah,
Yeah, I
have
like
fun with
that.
it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would say, I mean, and I think that I said this last time too, so I know that for our frequent flyers here, they've probably heard me say this before, but you know, look out of your circle for inspiration. So, you know, if you are the president of the psychology club and you want to look at what Rowan Psychology Club is doing, or TCNJ's psychology club, like, that's great. But also, like, look at some of the programs and the trends that are happening like nationwide, and what things you have found to be like cool and successful. Like, what has kept you entertained and motivated during you know, the last few months, and like what virtual programs or virtual experiences do you think are cool? So it doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, well, these are all the programs that my club has done in the past, or this is what Circle K is doing at other schools. But like, look and see, like, what are some other community service projects that are just, you know, taking off around the nation right now. So I mean, definitely expand that circle. Like, don't just look at these few things for ideas, but really like think big and look at other areas and other industries, and, you know, what people are doing, what companies are doing that have been really successful. I know that we don't, you know, have the budget that matches, you know, like Disney, for example. I keep using that because that was like the first like big highlight of the pandemic, or Saturday Night Live at home. You know, but think creatively about like how you and your organization can mimic some of these really successful things that have been done nationwide during the pandemic. So, Any other last thoughts or ideas or questions? All right, well, please, as a reminder, click that link in the chat for to mark your attendance. The link to the YouTube video that I was talking about is in the chat as well. And if you have any other questions or thoughts after this, we're always available through email, and starting next week, we'll be available back in person as our office reopens. So I hope that you'll join us again next Tuesday for the Student Leader Roundtable at 10 a.m. But thank you all so much for being with us today, and I hope that you were all able to take some tips to go. So thank you so much, and I will see you all soon.